Okay, we're going to pull back the curtain on an 800-year-old mystery, a story about a book that's said to hold some truly terrifying power. But this story doesn't start in some dusty old library. It starts with a very modern nightmare. So let's set the scene. We're not going back centuries, not yet anyway. We're starting just last year, 2023, in the super modern, gleaming city of Dubai. So you've got this guy, Omar, a software engineer, and he stumbles upon a PDF of this ancient book, the Shams al-Ma'arif, which means the Son of Knowledge. And as he's reading it, he gets completely sucked in. He starts to believe this isn't just a book, it's a key to controlling jinn, getting anything he wants, basically becoming a miracle worker. So he tries it. He picks an incantation from the text and just starts chanting. And yeah, his life changed all right, but not in the way he'd hoped. He wakes up and his world is just broken. He's seeing things in the corner of his eye, these shadowy figures, things that just should not be there. His wife, completely freaked out, said he just kept muttering the word Ifrit, Ifrit, over and over. When he could finally talk about it, all Omar could say was that he'd opened a door that was meant to stay locked forever. So, what is this book? And who in the world would create something like this? To get to the bottom of that, we have to rewind the clock, way back. We're talking the 12th century, to meet the man at the very heart of this mystery. So here's the first major twist. The guy who wrote this thing, Ahmad al-Buni, he wasn't some dark magician living in a cave, not at all. His dad was a devout Sufi scholar, and al-Buni himself was a true product of the Islamic Golden Age, a time of incredible learning and discovery. I mean, this guy was brilliant. When he was young, he mastered things like complex geometry and dove deep into the mystical side of Islam, studying the 99 names of Allah. He didn't stay put, though. He became this traveling scholar, ending up in Alexandria, which back then was this incredible melting pot of ideas. Muslims, Christians, Jews, all sharing knowledge. And his life's work, his passion, was something called ilm al-huruf, the science of letters. He truly believed that the Arabic alphabet was a kind of divine source code for the entire universe. And modern historians who've studied him, people like Noah Gardner, they all pretty much agree. Al-Buni was a deeply religious man, a mystic trying to get closer to God. So that brings us to this massive contradiction, right? How on earth did a spiritual guide written by a pious scholar turn into the most feared book of black magic on the planet? Well, the answer, it turns out, has very little to do with al-Buni himself. It has everything to do with what happened right after he died, a perfect storm of chaos, fear, and political ambition. Okay, so check this out. In 1225, the same year he finishes his original manuscript, al-Buni passes away, and right at that moment, the whole region is in turmoil. The Mongol invasions are just tearing through the Islamic world. Out of this chaos, a new group rises to power, the Mamluks. Now, these guys were former military slaves who became rulers, and they were desperate for any advantage to hold on to their power. And their courtiers, wanting to curry favor, started looking for unconventional solutions. They took al-Buni's spiritual work and began adding things to it, dark rituals, instructions for summoning jinns, all to give their new bosses a supernatural weapon. And when you put the two versions side by side, the change is just staggering. What started as a spiritual guide for one person's soul got twisted into a how-to manual for gaining worldly power. It's a total perversion of the original intent, swelling from a short manuscript into this huge monster of a book. Just think about that. 40 pages. That's all it was, a slim, focused guide for a Sufi seeker on their personal journey to enlightenment. And then there's this. Over 600 pages, a book bloated with centuries of anonymous editions, with each new author layering on their own dangerous rituals and their own selfish ambitions. And here's a perfect example of the kind of stuff that got added later. This ritual to summon a really nasty type of jinn called an Ifrit. You see, it involves magic squares, Hebrew letters, invoking King Solomon's ring. This is straight up sorcery. It has zero to do with al-Buni's Sufi mysticism and everything to do with the black magic that was bolted on afterwards. So, for hundreds of years, religious scholars and authorities have absolutely condemned this book. But here's the million-dollar question. Were they condemning al-Buni's actual work or the corrupted forgery it had become? Take the legendary scholar Ibn Taymiyyah. He famously ripped into the book. His argument was that it promoted shirk, which is the massive sin of treating something else as equal to God. He said the book's goal was to control creation when the proper path is to submit to the creator. But, and this is the critical piece of the puzzle, look at the timeline. Ibn Taymiyyah was born 38 years after al-Buni died. So by the time he was a leading scholar, decades had already passed. The version of the Shams al-Ma'arif that he was reading was almost definitely not the original. It was a version that had already been corrupted by the Mamluk court sorcerers. And this just kept happening over and over again for centuries. The book was burned in Damascus as heresy in a cloak of piety. It was burned again in Najaf after the French published a huge combined edition. In 1925, it got an official fatwa against it in Saudi Arabia. But every single time, they were targeting a text that was getting further and further away from what al-Buni originally wrote. So after all this, what are we supposed to make of this story? I think it shows us that the appeal of hidden, forbidden knowledge is incredibly strong. But context is absolutely everything. Let's go back to al-Buni's core idea for a second, this ilm al-haruf, the belief that a divine code is hidden inside letters and numbers, a blueprint for how the universe works. You know, that's a really powerful concept, and he wasn't the only one fascinated by it. And this is just a brilliant connection. It shows how timeless these ideas are. Centuries later, you have a scientific genius like Nikola Tesla, and he's captivated by a very similar idea, that numbers, in his case 3, 6, and 9, held the ultimate key to the universe. So here's the bottom line. The book that people call the Shams al-Ma'arif today is basically a historical forgery. al-Buni's original 40-page spiritual text is, for all intents and purposes, lost to time. What we have now is this dangerous mashup, buried under centuries of dark magic added by people seeking political power. It's become this toxic cocktail where any original wisdom is completely inseparable from the poison of sorcery. And in the end, the whole saga of the Shams al-Ma'arif serves as this incredible cautionary tale. It's about how the lust for power can corrupt even the purest search for knowledge. And it leaves us with a really important question to think about. What kind of knowledge is really worth the risk of opening the wrong door?